home ownership seems further out of reach for millennials and Gen Z, according to fresh polling. Just shy of 2 in 3 young Australians in these cohorts believe they'll ever own a home. That's despite most aspiring to owning their own property. Joining me now live is Matt Crocker, poll program lead with the Susan McKinnon Foundation, the firm that has done this research. Thank you so much for your time this morning. So is the great Aussie dream simply dead now?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Thanks for having me, Danica. So 9 in 10 young Australians still aspire to home ownership, so that sense of the great Aussie dream is still there, but only about 6 in 10 young Australians think they'll actually be able to achieve it. So there's that big gap between housing aspiration and housing expectation.
Yeah, there certainly is a gap. So what are the biggest perceived barriers to home ownership then, according to this report?
Yeah, so they're all the things that you'd expect. So high housing prices are issue number 1, interest rates are issue number 2, and the ability to save for a deposit are the big 3 challenges that young people say that they face in trying to get into the housing market.
It's interesting because the aspiration, as you said, of those surveyed, it's still really strong despite all of those external factors. Do any of the people surveyed see their current situation changing anytime soon?
Yeah, so that sense of aspiration, young people haven't given up on the Australian dream. They think that sense of ownership is still something that they want to get to, but increasingly they're seeing challenges in achieving it. And interestingly, one of the other survey findings we had, we asked young people, does the cost of housing impact on other major life decisions? 72% of young Australians said that they'd had to delay other major life plans because of the high cost of housing. And that might be everything from changing jobs or careers, having kids, getting married, all impacted because of that high housing cost.
Wow, 72%, that says something. What do you think the results say about the state of Australia's housing market overall then?
Yeah, so the housing market is really, really challenging. So, trying to get young people into housing is one of the big policy challenges that we have. I mean, the good news is that all 3 levels of government are focused on the housing issue, and that's the first time in, I think, a long time that's been the case. But there's going to be lots of policy work needed and lots of effort from both government and the private sector to address some of those housing challenges.
It just seems that we do talk about this so often, Matt, about the housing challenges in Australia, yet nothing seems to change. Was that reflected in what people that you surveyed were telling you?
Yeah, certainly. So housing is one of the biggest issues. When we ask people, cost of living is the biggest issue in the country, and housing comes second. And whether that's the availability and affordability of housing to buy, or otherwise the availability and affordability of rental. So, there is that really strong sense out there from the community that they see this as a priority and a priority for governments to address. But of course, addressing it, as you say, Danica, is challenging. There's no simple fix to the housing issues, and it'll take all levels of government working together to see if we can improve it.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Matt, is the dream still to have the home? I mean, what about other housing density options given the current climate? Would people accept apartments or townhouses, for example?
Yeah, no, that's right. So increasingly, as house prices get higher and higher, we're looking at different forms of density. So we asked people what forms of density were most acceptable, and the results that came through most strongly: townhouses, terraces, and semi-detached, and those 1 to 3 story lower level apartment buildings were the ones which were most socially acceptable. So it's almost going back to those housing models of 100 years ago, where we used to build quite a lot of terraces and those smaller apartment blocks. That's what people want to see in those suburbs, and that's what they think are most acceptable, and importantly, are more affordable for people than those separate houses on those big blocks.
Yeah, it's about finding ways to enter the market overall. Matt Crocker, good to speak with you. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks, Danica. Really appreciate it.